Okay, let's dive into one of the biggest and honestly, one of the quietest threats facing your business today. What we're calling the Great Knowledge Drain. But more importantly, let's get right to the good stuff, a simple 6-step plan that you can actually use to stop it in its tracks. So let me just start with this question, and I want you to really think about it. You've been there, right? That moment a key player on your team leaves, and then this slow sinking feeling washes over you as you realize, nobody else actually knows how they did, well, anything. It's a nightmare, and it happens way more than we like to admit. And if that sinking feeling is getting a little too familiar, well, this number is a huge reason why. According to Forbes, a staggering 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day. That is a literal tidal wave of experience and wisdom walking right out the door. And believe me, that's not even the whole story. We call this whole phenomenon the Great Knowledge Drain, and it's so much bigger than just retirements. This is a fundamental challenge to the way our businesses hold on to the critical information they need to survive and, grow. That's right. On top of that retirement wave, we've still got the Great Resignation in full swing. When you combine those two forces, a generation of experts retiring and nearly half of the entire workforce thinking about jumping ship, the risk of losing mission-critical knowledge becomes absolutely massive. Your productivity, your innovation, it all takes a direct hit. So, what happens if we just, do nothing? Well, the cost of that silence, of just letting all that knowledge vanish into thin air, is frankly staggering. Let's actually put some numbers on it. For a small business, this is a real eye-opener. Research from Panocto shows that simply getting a handle on knowledge transfer can save you up to $2 million a year. That's real money, saved by not having your team constantly reinventing the wheel or wasting hours searching for answers that are already somewhere in the building. And what about a large enterprise? Well, that number can explode to $200 million. Suddenly, this isn't just about plugging a leak anymore, is it? It's about unlocking a massive opportunity for efficiency, for growth, for a real competitive advantage. So the takeaway here is that having a system is a no-brainer. The benefits are just so clear and powerful. You're not just safeguarding your company's most valuable assets. You're boosting productivity, you're making your teams more innovative, you're getting new folks up to speed in record time, and maybe most importantly, you're building a culture where everyone is always learning and getting better. Okay, but before we can build a system to protect all this valuable wisdom, we first have to understand what it is we're actually trying to protect. Because, not all knowledge is the same. Let's decode it. At its very core, what we're talking about is knowledge transfer. It's just a formal way of saying the process of making sure expertise doesn't just live inside one person's head, but becomes a shared resource for the entire team. And this slide perfectly breaks down the two types of knowledge we're dealing with. On one side, you have explicit knowledge. This is the easy stuff, right? It's the recipe in the cookbook, the user manual, the documented process. But on the other side, you have tacit knowledge. And this is the chef's intuition. It's that gut feeling, the experience that tells you why you do something, not just how. It's knowing exactly when a client is about to say yes. This is pure gold, and it is by far the hardest stuff to capture. So how in the world do we capture both the recipe and the chef's intuition? Well, that brings us to the solution. A really straightforward 6-step plan that any business can use to turn that individual magic into a collective superpower. And here it is, the whole roadmap. It's a continuous cycle, you see. You identify, you collect, you share, you adapt and update, you apply, and then you create. So let's break down what each of these steps actually looks like in the real world. First up, identify. You have to figure out what's most at risk. You can't capture everything, so you have to be strategic. Ask yourself, if my top engineer walked out tomorrow, what critical, unwritten knowledge would go with them? You've got to pinpoint those high-risk roles and that mission-critical info that doesn't live in a manual anywhere. Think of this first step as your triage. Next, we collect it. But the goal here isn't just a messy data dump. No, the key is to have a structured, standardized process, think simple templates, to capture insights and workflows in a way that's consistent and super easy for anyone to find and use later. A system only works if it's organized. This step turns a chaotic attic of information into a well-organized library. Okay, now for the sharing part. And this is so important. You have to use different methods for different kinds of knowledge. That explicit recipe-style knowledge, perfect for an internal wiki or a series of how-to videos. But that priceless tacit knowledge, the chef's intuition, you can't put a gut feeling in a manual. That stuff is best shared through human connection, things like mentoring, job shadowing, and coaching. Step 4 is all about recognizing that knowledge isn't static. It has a shelf life. Markets change, better processes are invented, and old information becomes totally useless. This can't be a one-and-done project. You need a rolling plan to constantly review and update what you've collected so it stays relevant. Honestly, an outdated knowledge base is probably worse than having none at all. A library of knowledge is completely useless if no one ever checks out a book. Step 5 is all about application. It's about building a culture where checking the shared resources is the first thing people do, not the last resort. You have to encourage your teams to actually put this stuff to work and, just as important, measure it. Is onboarding getting faster? Are fewer mistakes being made? Application is what proves the value of the whole system. And finally, step 6, create. This is where the whole thing really pays off. Once the cycle is humming along and people are using this shared foundation of knowledge, they're going to start building on top of it. They'll find better ways, new shortcuts, and create entirely new knowledge. And then the whole process just starts over again, keeping your organization agile, competitive, and always, always learning. So let's bring this all home. We've talked about the problem, the incredible cost of ignoring it, and a clear 6-step solution. Now, let's distill this into your action plan. So here it is, your plan boiled down to the essentials. First, identify what's most critical to your company's success. Standardize how you collect it so it's not a mess. Diversify your sharing methods because not everything fits in a PDF. Make reviewing and refining a regular habit. Encourage its real-world application. And above all, foster a culture where creating new knowledge is just part of the job. I want to leave you with one final thought. Let's forget all the theory for just a second. Think about your own team right now. What priceless piece of knowledge, that chef's intuition, is currently living inside just one person's head? And what's your plan to make sure it stays with the company long after they're gone?